All right, welcome back to our ongoing review series of the Ava movies. Today we'll be talking about 3.0, otherwise known as what the fuck is going on here? Apparently there were a lot of issues with the development and production of this film. I haven't really done a lot of research into it, but you can kind of tell when you're watching this movie that definitely a lot of like creative issues on the end of like Ano and his team. Not to say that this film is bad or anything, but in terms of like the consistent quality that Ano has kind of like put into his Ava properties, the show, the end of Ava movie, the last two rebuild films. You can definitely tell he was a bit lacking here. Because of the ending of 2.0, don't go into 3.0 like expecting like something akin to some of the later stuff in the original series. 3.0 is completely fucking different. Because of like specific character decisions made at the end of 2.0. 3.0 is just we are in space right now, we are doing crazy shit. Keep up. But it's not like keep up in like the best way possible, because what they're like putting down is some really wacky shit. Let's like quickly go over, like what I really like about this movie. It's, it looks great. It sounds great. In terms of like the animation, they like completely, not, they look like the characters, but like the animation is basically upgraded and it looks really fucking good. I don't know how they put so much fucking work into, how like characters emote and like the eye movements and like how their mouth like enunciates like syllables and stuff, but it does a really good job of like making character emotions like really palpable, sorry, fucking words. Anyways, also another thing is that the CGI in this movie is actually pretty good. I'm in the camp of like don't ever use CGI because it looks really fucking weird. But they do a good job of like keeping, from what I remember at least, they do a good job of like keeping like humans like non CGI so that they look animated and they look nice and like clean and like lively, like not too like sleek or whatever. And basically like Ava's like machines, all that like not inorganic stuff, that's all that's CGI, and it's not it's not horrible. It's actually pretty good. It's pretty fluid, and they do CGI action scenes that are really nice. So yeah, it's definitely a step up from some of the original stuff. I really like the action in these films, and 3.0 and the last film 4.0. The action is definitely great. It's a fun time for sure, but kind of like if you turn off your brain and kind of just let the noise happen, definitely it's just like action for the sake of action. Kind of as a vehicle to get characters from point A to point B. That's kind of like my criticism of the action, but in the end, it's still fine to watch. The only thing in these films that gets progressively better and better is the music. I don't know what kind of drugs this man was on, but Shiro, Sagisu Shiro, is like, he does a really good job of keeping this balance between nostalgic fresh, and familiar. Like, I don't know how he does it. I think he like just sticks to like his like core instruments, and sometimes, introduces like a few new elements to like spice it up. Um but I think it's that like consistency that really like tells you that this is his style of composition. And yeah, I mean, like, I don't know how to like really describe it, but um he maintains his style while also um kind of like elevating it to like real epic proportions. Like, um what's the name of that track? But like the wrath that like God only knows or something, that battle track that he puts in at like the last act of the film is like so good. Like, the music is just a constant like joy to listen to when watching these films. Moving on, I think in terms of some of the best stuff in this film, definitely the duo Shinji and Kaoru are the heart of this film. Um, they're gay. They're very gay for each other. It's it's not like, outwardly like we're fucking, but like they have a very special connection with each other, and the film does a really good job of, even though it's done in like a short amount of time, of really selling you on how deeply Shinji starts to like care for Kaworu. They do this with like really nice piano scenes, piano duet scenes, um, both figuratively. It's like just a really nice like device that Ano uses to just make sure that you understand that they're syncing up, physically and emotionally. It does a good job of portraying a potential relationship for Shinji that isn't as like haywire as the ones with Rei and Asuka. Um, it's about, Shinji kind of like experiencing for the first time just like unbridled, unconditional love, and and not and depending on like his current emotional circumstances, I'm like at a mix of whether or not this would be like a healthy thing for him or if it isn't. Um, Whatever, in the end, you can tell that Shiro has developed this like huge attachment to Kaoru just because of what happens in the end of the film. Um, Overall, I think I do like this movie more than I would say like most people. I do understand like their criticisms, and I think they're founded and they're very much justified. Um, but I think I really like the concept of this film, is that it's ultimately a tragedy that is uh kind of like moved forward or like spurred on based on like the desperation and the desire to like make things right. Because, at the end of the second film, um Shinji kind of fucks a lot of things up. He doesn't realize it, nor did he intend it, but it was the consequence of his actions. And so Shinji kind of wants to like, redeem himself and like kind of, justify himself by, going through with this plan to, make things right. But that desperation, and that uh blind pursuit of redemption, is, as Ano clearly clearly intends to convey, is not a good thing, and in fact is sometimes a catalyst to make things worse. Um, all right. Well, talked enough about how good Ava 3 is. Let's talk about some of the things that like really bog it down for not just me, but for a lot of people who went into this film. I don't know what we were expecting, but definitely not like a slew and slurry of just like really obscure bullshit that's kind of like thrown our way. 3.0 like does like a lot, it gives like a lot of time to just introduce like a bunch of shit that ultimately has like no bearing on like the plot of the on like the emotional arcs of the characters. Um, like a lot of the elements in the original stuff, like you can argue they're still, you know, obscure and like and like dumb and like weird um and just like, you know, uh like weird for the sake of being weird. Like they're just talking about like angels and biblical shit and heretical like Judaism like bullshit. It's all like really like funky shit and kind of like why like Ava has this like reputation has this like kind of like mystique around it. But in the original stuff, it was all a vehicle to kind of like to kind of like fast track like these characters like mental degradation and depending on the character like their resolution, right? It's all in service to like the mental and emotional arcs of these characters. But here in 3.0, they're just kind of like introduced and they don't have that same framework. Like it's not like it's like too weird and too crazy and like too um detached from the emotional stuff. Whereas so like when you're watching it, you're like, I'm just like learning about stuff that I don't like comprehend and it never like pays off, which is why a lot of people I think were kind of like put off by this movie. Also, a lot of the characters or a lot of the returning characters for 3.0 just make a lot of like strange and illogical decisions that are kind of not in line with who they were. Of course, shit, light went off. I mean, like in the framework of the narrative, it makes sense that they're different people, but it's kind of like they're just not like giving you enough information to like really like understand why they've turned this way. These are problems that are solved in the last movie, but in terms of like 3.0, like you're just kind of like left in the dark like Shinji, but you don't like feel great about it and it doesn't do like a good job of like justifying why it's doing this, or why it's taking this narrative stance. Yeah. It just like is really confusing, but it doesn't replace that. It doesn't like give you anything to like chew on. It's kind of just confusion for the sake of confusion. I don't know why Ano decided to like put all this crazy shit in. I think when I rewatched this film, I think he just didn't know what direction he wanted to go in, so he was just like trying a whole bunch of like different stuff, and and I think he like kind of like took like a hard lesson from it because like, you know, this movie is like not uh it feels and doesn't feel like Ava at the same time, and I don't think that's like a good thing. When it does feel like Ava, that's when the film shines. But there's a lot of points in this movie where it just does not. It just feels so like cheap and like weird, without justifying the weirdness of it. But yeah, that's like my overall thoughts of 3.0. It's really ambitious for sure. Like it does try like a lot of different stuff, and some of that stuff is good. Like the technical stuff is all great. I love how this movie feels, like sounds like, the animation looks amazing. But it really just like sacrificed like story logic and like emotional arcs for just like a really strange and convoluted like lore that's like inputted into it, and the film definitely suffers for it. I guess that like ended off like you will not feel satisfied after watching this movie. You will want to watch the next one immediately, which would be more of a negative if 4.0 never existed. If Anna was just like, I'm fucking done with Ava because this shit, I don't understand this shit anymore. If he just like bailed out of Ava, definitely this movie would be I would regard this movie a little bit more critically. But because you know the issues that exist in this film are kind of resolved in the next one for the most part, I'm a little bit more forgiving of its existence now. Um, and personally, because I do love a good tragedy, and this film is definitely tragic. So yeah, I'll give it like a six. I give it a 6 out of 10. Definitely one of the weaker entries in the Ava series, but but necessary to a degree. Like I do agree with I do like the utter low that this film puts Shinji in, and whether or not that's your thing or not is kind of like a personal thing, but I think it's a I think it's necessary for kind of like how the last film resolves things. So yeah, yeah, that's about it.